And we are live. All right, so this is the first time that I'm attempting this, that we are attempting this. I have Mellanie Ramsey. That's how you say your name, right? Ramsey? I never said your last name before.
Because I don't really like to use my last name, but thanks.
Okay, well, we have Mellanie. We have Dave Schumacher. Soon to join us will be Tim Vickers. And then this asshole, me, Kenny Biddle. I'll be here. And then we're going to talk tonight about what?
Got somebody.
No, we're not. No, we're going to talk about some ways to improve paranormal investigation. We're going to have a discussion because we're all into this kind of thing. And recent events have brought up some ideas and some bad ideas, some good ideas. And we thought we'd get together and discuss it because we haven't actually, all of us do our own work in our own right. And we do pretty good work, I think. I love the work that these two do. And then Tim, when he gets here, I mean, we work together on some experiments and stuff. So it's really good stuff. And I figured, well, we all figured we decided that it would be nice to get together and have a conversation. So how about I throw out a topic and you guys can just start talking?
Go for it.
I think the first topic, like I wrote a couple notes down. I didn't write a lot down because I just figured we'd just go off the cuff here. But I figured a good topic to start with would be knowledge.
A good one.
Good one. So I'm gonna put you on the spot, Dave. First, what do you think about what kind of knowledge do you think people should have? Maybe basic knowledge, or just in general. What should you have when you're investigating paranormal claims?
Yeah, I think one of the first things you need to have is the ability to think critically, to evaluate things, test ideas, test the claims, and know what's going on. Beyond that, I think you have to have a general working knowledge of a lot of different areas. You have to have an idea, you have to have knowledge of, how to interview people, how to question people, what to look for, what to ask. As far as equipment, you better know how your equipment works. You better know the limitations. You better know the what it's detecting and what it can't detect. You got to know the precision, the accuracy, the least significant change. That's just equipment wise. If you're looking into parapsychology, my big thing is I've always pushed people need to have an understanding and working knowledge of parapsychology, because back in the late 1800s, parapsychology was kind of, and the Society for Psychical Research was born out of people investigating spontaneous reports of spontaneous cases, which were ghosts and hauntings. And, if you believe what parapsychology has found or not, the methods they've developed have been very good. But I also think you need to have a working knowledge, a general knowledge of science, scientific method, how to collect data, how to interpret data. I think you need to have a working knowledge of basic statistics, because I don't know how can you collect all this data and make any sense out of it if you have no idea how to analyze it. So but I also think you need to be very aware and knowledgeable of the skeptical literature, people that don't see things your way. You also need to have a good working knowledge of the basic sciences, biology, chemistry, physics, environmental science. That's just kind of there's a long list of stuff, but those are just a couple key points I would make, and I'll throw it back to you and Mel.
What do you think, Mel?
I think you need to, it's the two thing that's really lacking right now in the paranormal community. Original thought. I'm really tired. I'm dead serious. I'm really tired of regurgitation. Same old topics, same old claims, same old methodology, same old approach. How about some originality? One, have your own thoughts. And two, I think people need to start having, or at least trying to endeavor, a more investigative research approach before you even have boots on ground. I am a very adamant proponent of research. My background is in investigative reporting. So I think people need to learn to do homework, where to dig up information, utilization of public records, documents, things like that. So I think there definitely needs to be a push more towards research, not necessarily just on analysis or research on experiments. People need to know how to do research on claims and historic sites or locations, residential areas, just the basic fundamentals, how to dig up information and what to do with that instead of using the internet all the time and paranormal sites all the time or TV shows. That just all that does is just recycles the same old information, which a lot of it is actually incorrect. So I think those are the two things that the paranormal micro society really needs to start focusing on. We've lost absolute originality. It's so many things have been done over and over. So many discussions have been done on the same topic. And, you talk about wanting to make the field better. Well, what are you bringing new? Honestly, what new are you bringing? Because if it's the same old thing, we're static and everything's just going to become very stagnant and the cycle just starts all over. And after a while, even those of us that, not just us that's been in the paranormal community for a long time, but people who are new to it, it gets old, it gets boring. And then what ends up happening? Then people start trying to take shortcuts because it's really nothing new.
I agree. I think they're good points. Both of you guys made great points.
One question for Mellanie. Micro society, that's an interesting term. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? It just kind of piqued my interest.
It's not really a community. It's not. And I don't like to call it a community. It is, even though sometimes I do refer to it, it's like it's somehow this, and I don't like to call it a field anymore. I used to, because there are groups and there are universities, there are scientists that actually do study it. And in that respect, it is a field of study. But for those people that are so involved and invested in the paranormal as a whole, it stopped becoming a field of study. And it's not necessarily a hobby, because after a while, the drama and the crap just gets so overwhelming that to me, it is very much a micro society. It's like a, military society or anything else. You've got, your political factions within the paranormal, and it's a unique collective whole that tries. I use that term very loosely, but that's how I see it. I don't see it as a community because nobody's really working together anymore.
Okay. Yeah, and I just make a quick comment, then I'll toss it to you, Kenny. I think the one thing we need to do is make sure we differentiate between doing ghost hunts and investigations versus people who actually conduct research. They're different goals. And I think one of the things I've noticed talking to Kenny in some of our debates, he's investigating a certain claim. He's looking for a natural explanation. I think back in the day, Jen and I used to do that. We would go to homes and businesses and do that. We don't do that anymore. We've moved from that into research, formal research. So if you want to we're trying to figure out what's going on, why people have the experiences. We're not necessarily coming in to prove or disprove a claim. Now that's part of research, but I think there's a differentiation that needs to be made. And you talked about it a little bit, Mellanie, when you're talking about people that do real research in the field. So I think there is a difference that ghost hunters, paranormal investigators versus researchers. So it's just a real quick thing I wanted to throw out there.
But that's another reason why I say micro society and not a community, because of, everybody's around the same thing. But like you said, the different goals, it's like the different factions here and there. And so that's why I have really actually started using that term a lot when I'm talking about those that are interested in the paranormal.
Jen was going to ask you, what quantitates, or how do you quantify that? I mean, how do you define? Sorry, Kenny, we keep.
I'm sorry, no,
Kenny's not talking.
So
sorry, Ben's asking Mellanie, how do you quantify or qualify that? It's an interesting concept. We're just interested in it. I like it. I mean, just trying to understand.
What quantitates a micro society?
Yep. No, that's a good go.
What makes a micro society? Well, it's like well, obviously there's a particular purpose, and it's around the paranormal. So that's the collective whole part. However, keep in mind the paranormal isn't just ghosts. It isn't just spirits. It's also cryptozoology. It's ufology. It's, you know, parapsychology, things that are not normal. So to me, that's like the individual communities within this aggregate of people. And they have there, then you have within that people who are hunting, people who are researching, and people who are investigating. So that's why I call it a micro society, because it's a lot bigger than I think people realize, you know, when you put all of these different groups together and stuff like that. So it's interesting, and how they work and interact with each other and promote each other, or promote events or findings and things like that. It to me is even more interesting. So that's why I say a micro society. It's not a community. It's just like everything else. If that makes sense.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I mean, I'm looking at, I say the same thing. I say community, just because there's a whole bunch of people, and I didn't think about it that way. It's interesting. But as far as the knowledge thing goes, I agree with both of what you guys said. I guess I would just build upon what you said. Like Mel, you said about where to find information, and I find that's a huge problem. I think people don't realize. I don't know if I would say maybe some are lazy, and others just don't do enough. They don't understand where to look for information. They don't understand all the avenues, all the different pathways you can take to find information. You can find people and places and the history of things. And I think there's a bit of laziness in it, because it's easier to just watch TV or a YouTube video on something and say, oh, well, I did research on it and I know the history of this place now, or take a tour of a place that, my own experience, I've taken tours of some historic sites and found out that the information they were giving us was inaccurate. And that was only after some details, and you look into it further and you find out, okay, this person didn't actually die here, or this person didn't live here. So I think that's a big deal. I think people need to start looking into how to find information, like what to look for, how to look for it, what resources there are out there. There's plenty of websites that can teach you that.
There's not, though. There's not a lot.
It's hard to. Yeah, we're trying to look at it like there might be websites out there, but they're hard to find, or people don't utilize them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's because I think a lot of people, when they're doing their research, they tend to center their initial research around the paranormal. And so they gravitate towards that. And I think that's just because I think Kenny touched upon it. A larger portion, I would say, it's laziness. True research and investigative research, that initial homework, it's time consuming. It's a lot of digging. Just for one site that was very, very public, took me 8 months to get the historic background and to do the digging and pulling public records or newspaper archives and things like that. It took 8 months, but I make sure that I do all of this stuff before I ever go to the location. I don't want to go to location, get all this stuff, and then go back and do research to try and backtrack and find out if that's true or not. Because then when I get there, I'm not adequately prepared. I don't have all the tools in my belt in which I can ask the right questions. So I want to make sure I have as much accurate and substantiated, documented information as possible before I even step boots on ground.
That's interesting, because I think like way back when I was part of ghost hunting teams, the norm was you weren't supposed to research it until you went in, so you could just get all your experiences without knowing what was going on, and then you would do the retrofitting, because that's what you're describing, I think, the retrofitting afterwards, because you would go and do the research and say, oh, well, I thought there was a female, there might be a female presence, and oh shit, grandmom Edna died in this room, so therefore it must be Grandma Edna that is the ghost. And
well, I see where you're going with it. I'm part of a team, so my team is blind. My background is research. So one of the things that for me, it's easy. It's a lot easier. That's how I've been trained, in terms of my employment as well for like 8 years. That was my background to do. And I can still, but I'm not going in there with claims. I'm looking for historic information about this location, about what kind of people lived here. If I'm going to visit your house, Kenny, and I'm just meeting you for the first time, I'm not going to go to your house and know nothing about you. Why would I? I'm going to ask, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If I find out, okay, you're going to meet Kenny Biddle. Okay, great. Who is that? I want to,
that's what I say.
That's the way I want to go. So I want to go there. I want to know, okay, well, why is this guy significant? What has he done? Let me read some of his work and let me see what his focus is. What does he enjoy? Okay, do we have anything in common? I would look into that before I step foot into your home. And that's what I do with these things. I'm not looking at claims at that point. I'm getting the basics down about this site. Especially if it's historic, and it's on a registry, why is that? I guarantee you, it's not because of a ghost claim. It's because of something else. And so that's what I focus on. When I go in for a paranormal investigation with my team, the team remains completely blind. A lot of times, some members don't even know where we're going. And that's because of the way that this, the information that has been spreading can be wrong. I don't want them getting wrong information, then going in there with a confirmation bias and trying to fit the pieces to what they've heard. I have to take them blind. For me, however, I need to know the background. Are there hazards? If this place is dilapidated, why would I risk other people going in or my own safety? Okay, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I guess that's the difference. We come at this from different viewpoints. Like I'm looking at the claim, but I want to add that in doing so, I also look at the people. Like if I'm going to someone's house or if I'm going to whatever location it is, whoever's making the claim, that's step one for me. I have to do a background check. I have to figure out who I'm dealing with, because I mean, if from my perspective, if they're a known hoaxer, that's a red flag right there. So I'm usually on guard anyway, but if I know that they have a history of hoaxing, then I'm more on guard, because I'm looking for that kind of thing. And before I go on, I want to say, I think Tim made it in. Tim?
I did make it in.
Yes.
Yo, Tim, what up?
What's up, guys?
Good. We're talking about the first topic we're discussing is knowledge.
I can't help you there.
The idea of with paranormal investigations and what kind of knowledge people should have. And there's some good points already. And I think Dave, you might have touched on it a little bit, but I always like to advise people to seek out the literature that's already been out there. Because, and I think Mellanie touched on it too. I mean, people are doing the same shit over and over again, and they have no idea that there's been studies done. There has been investigations, and there's so much information on a particular topic or a location for maybe years or decades before. And I mean, I know in a lot of the discussions Dave and I have had, I mean, he bombards me with links to studies out the ass.
He does that to you too?
Yeah. And
I'm still sifting through them, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll keep posting.
I like them.
But they're good. I mean, yeah, I love it because it's stuff that I hadn't known of, and I can go and reference it and see, okay, shit, you know, a lot of people did this before.
That's important stuff, because you need to know what's going on and what's been done. And actually some of the, even if you don't agree with the conclusion or the discussion, some of the methods that they use are valid. They're very valid. They'll give you ideas about how to do things better. And that's part of the peer review process, is to put what you did in front of a bunch of other supposed experts in the field and peers, and get some feedback, and they make it better. So the idea is that anybody who would read a paper like that, and you read the materials and methods, you should be able to duplicate that paper or those materials and that experiment. So it's really important to take a look at that stuff. I mean, even if you don't agree with the conclusion, a lot of times those papers are published by people who are decent researchers and scientists, even though you might disagree with their conclusions, being a parapsychologist, if you're into that or not. So yeah, it's just worth doing. And the other thing is, you know, that, and this gets into another big problem of the field. I don't want to switch the topic that we're on at the moment, but the big problem is that nobody is publishing or putting their stuff out there for peer review in any way, shape, or form.
Some are, but not in
Some are, but not in that format. And I think a minimum standard is to at least put everything you've done on a website. It's easy, it's cheap, it's free, but it's just not happening.
I agree.
Didn't they used to have, what was it, Paranormal Warehouse? I know that Tim and I had shared information on there before, and Tim, you were the one who directed me to that. That was a few years ago, though. I don't know if they still have that up.
It's never caught on. It's been, I know that site, and I know some of it's on there, and the way they collect or what they're doing. But, you know, Lloyd Auerbach, Kenny, I think you just talked to Lloyd. He tried to get something where they set standards and collect information years ago, and it fell flat on its face.
Well, you can't.
Yeah. Yeah, I did talk to Lloyd today. That was fun. It was nice. First time I ever talked to him. Really nice guy.
Yeah, anyway, but he's tried initiatives like that. And I think one of the big things is everybody's running around with this new equipment, doing all this stuff and collecting supposedly all this great information. But where is it?
Well, nobody knows what even is being collected.
Nobody, yeah, exactly. Nobody knows what's
whoa. Is that a voice from beyond?
Sorry.
The problem with that, and this is why I have a big problem with that, is because of the way that they're collecting the data. I can't stand behind something that's collecting data using the ghost hunting equipment that's being used out there. If people are using data loggers that had binary codes, you know, we use those, that's one thing. And then feeding it to someone who can understand and can interpret it, because that's how they've been trained. Rather than having this paranormal investigative group out there with, you know, FLIRs, thermal cameras, and, you know, these, I don't know, obvious things, and then saying that that's data, and what it does, uploading all of that stuff into this, you know,
It's a hard thing.
if it was a site, well, to me, that's not legitimate data.
That's the hard.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The problem is that nobody has the right criteria. I mean, not everybody is doing it the same way. And that's the problem.
That's a good,
because we all need to do similar, you know.
You need to at least have a standard on how to collect data and how to present it.
And when you're,
I mean, I think we all agree to that, right?
And when that information is being presented, it needs to be in a form that everybody can understand and that you can present, because in scientific forms, it's not always going to be the same as somebody who doesn't understand how. But
one thing we've all commented, I know Kenny has, and Mellanie and Tim, that is hard work to do that. That is not easy. Well, that's not going out and running around with a camera taking pictures of orbs or a static detector saying that it's going off on the carpeting.
Well, it's not even an educational level. I mean, everybody needs to know exactly what's expected and how to get there.
Yeah.
That's a good point. But I think the problem is that to me, this is a hobby for the most part. It's an amateur hobby. For the amateurs, it's a hobby, and they don't understand the amount of work, how fucking boring it can be, and how tedious it can be.
Yep.
And the formats, they don't understand the formats that you need to present this. You need to collect data. I mean, data collection is something that always comes up because you see, I mean, for example, the base readings that you see some teams take. You know, they walk around with one of these pieces of shit, and they walk around. Yeah, I see the eye roll. But they walk around for what, like 30 seconds in every room, and they expect that to be a base reading to compare to, and that's ludicrous.
Meanwhile, nobody's even bothering to take measurements of rooms. We went into a hospital once, and the location owner thought we were wasting time because we spent almost 4 hours taking measurements of hallways, distance, widths, heights of rooms, getting the degrees, seeing if there's slants and floorboards before we could do anything else. People don't understand that, just a few degrees off in flooring can cause a funhouse effect. And, we learned that from a professor at UC Berkeley when I called him. So it can be very, very tedious. And when some of these places that you go to, it's a pay to play and they give you a certain amount of time, it doesn't allow for that. But I think, to be honest, I don't think teams want to do it.
Right.
It's not a cool thing.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Speak up, Tim. What are your thoughts on knowledge and what people should know and present? Go ahead.
I think you guys covered most of what I heard, and that's reading. And I like to read, but I don't know if people like to take the time to read and do what they need to do to read and research and reach out to other people and ask questions. What have you done? And what can I learn from you? One of the great things that I learned after, I haven't met Mellanie, but after reading and looking at her site, was the great research that she does into sites on validation of the claims. And I don't know if I can say the names of the places, but two that come to my mind were great when she found out that the claims that all these people thought were leading to the haunting were absolutely false. And I learned that from her, just from reading her reports or what she put out for other people to consume. And I think that's good knowledge. That changed the way I approach when I look at things. And when I listen to claims, my mind kind of goes back to those two places that she documented about, and I take my direction based on what I saw with her, which I thought was really great. And so to me, knowledge is just like, there's stuff out there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and if you do reinvent the wheel, you're just wasting time. If you just look and reach out to people, you can learn stuff that you won't have to learn the hard way.
The key thing to look for is citations. Like when you go to these websites, if people want to go to a website or a paranormal team's website or whatever, and they want to get the background on something, the first thing that I look for, and this is something that was taught to me as a grad student when doing research methods, is you look at citations. You look to see if they have them. You look to see what types of sources they use, if they're peer-reviewed journals, if they're original documents, things like that. That, to me, plays a large part as to whether or not I feel like, okay, this is a legitimate source, or okay, this is worth continuing reading. That saves a lot of time right there. If I don't see any citations, if I don't see where they got their information from, if I see the use of a lot of pronouns, well, they've done a lot of research. Who is they? And they can't tell me who they is or where they got their research from. It's a waste of my time.
Damn. I think we're getting, what are we getting? Number 5?
That's the phantom voice that you were hearing. Anyway, I thought you'd move over here.
I think that's a good point, Mel. I mean, I do the same thing. I look for citations now, and that was a big thing for me, a big learning experience. Over the years, as I developed, I guess, my writing skills, I learned more and more how important citations are. That, just saying that I knew somebody said something or quoting somebody without telling you where I got that quote, is a big deal, because you need to know where it came from so you can go check up on it, because I've done that myself, where I've read a book or two where it's like they had some references, they were really flimsy, and when you check them out, you find out the quote was out of context, and some shit like that, which really makes a big difference. So it's important to know that. And I think I like what Tim brought up too. He kind of hinted at something about consulting others. I've learned from all of you guys, and it's been awesome knowing you, because I've learned so much from just the conversations that we've had about psychology and history and just interviewing and just the knowledge you guys have, that not one person, and I think this is an important point, not one person can know it all.
That's true.
And it's extremely important to reach out to others, not just your friends or your buddies, because that's not exactly what peer review is. It's not, calling your buddy that's on your ghost hunting team, in general, that, hey, what do you think of this? It's reaching out to people that have the background in the particular area of study, particular field.
We call them, in the military, we call them SMEs, subject matter experts.
Yes.
When it comes to something like photography, I know how to take a picture, but I don't know a lot of the ins and outs of it. I usually go to Kenny, and then I'll go to my friend who's a professional photographer, went to school for it, who is not involved in the paranormal. The same thing I do when it comes to like science, physics, biology, geology. I utilize people who are SMEs and are not involved in the paranormal, so that I can get an objective and my mission can be accomplished without being tainted with this whole paranormal spin.
So Tim,
analyzed.
I think Tim does something similar in his job too, right? Tim, don't you look for subject matter experts?
Yeah, for forensic interviewing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So we do evidence-based, or we always have to have peer review, and we always have to update our research, and we always have to reach out and have our work reviewed by others in the field that don't know us. They give us feedback, and we do the same for them, and that helps us a lot. Mainly, I've been doing forensic interviewing for about 20 years. So, I mean, this is kind of a sidebar, but it's like an example, I think, is when you do something for a long time without you knowing it, you have a tendency to fall into a rut or a habit, and you always think what you always do is right. And it's not until someone comes along and they're like, what the hell are you doing? You're like, what do you mean? What the hell am I doing? I'm doing what I've always done. And when you say that, then that's the problem. So, it's good to have that. It's good. So it's important that we all do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. I love that. I do that with some of my writing, because I guess sometimes I'm worried that I'm being too much of a dick. Honestly, I mean, you guys know me. I mean, sometimes I can be a dick, and I sometimes I finish an article and I give it to my wife to look at, and she'll tell me if I'm being too harsh. Sometimes I've sent articles to Tim, because I said, hey, how does this sound? How does this feel? What's the feel of this? And I've run ideas past both Mel and Dave. Just talking in discussion to see if I make sense from what I'm talking about, because I mean, shit, it's difficult, and you want to make sure you're not falling into this rut where I don't want to get this big head where, oh, I'm a writer, I'm a blogger, I can do this, and I know what I'm doing. And, down the line, I start writing something and people start saying, hey, well, I'm pretty harsh. All I do is criticize. I don't offer any solutions. And, I want to move past that. I want to make sure that I am doing something positive, not just, being mean.
I think one of the problems is that maybe can lend towards improving and helping is to add resources and share those resources to whom people can refer to. I know that I give information out to people. I'll say, okay, well, you can call this professor at this university. Like When we were working on Bobby Mackey's, there were certain claims about how and the writing styles of a poem that was up on a wall. So I went to a linguist at APSU who's, and I've read some of her work before, and it was amazing. And I asked about dialect. And then when quote unquote EVPs came across, is this what they would have talked like back then? And what did this sound like? Can you explain a diphthong to me? Can you tell me about this program? And, it's the little nuances. And so she said, well, if you know anybody else, if they might have questions as well, you can always refer them to me here. So there's certain universities that I will say, okay, if you want to know about the Funhouse effect, you need to go to the UC Berkeley, call up there, So I think the problem is, it's kind of like what Jen was saying and what Dave was hitting on, is that there's no place to go to find these resources that the average Joe hunter, whatever, paranormal enthusiast can go to. They don't know where to go. So what do? They don't.
That's true.
I want to put out there.
They don't know where to go. So
How long is this? gonna
if they don't know where to go, how do we help them?
One of the things that I do is, and I don't know if this is going to be bragging, but during my lectures, the lectures that I've been doing is basically about how to solve mysteries. I don't try to say that I'm a scientist or anything like that, and I make sure I introduce myself and my background, but I go through that kind of stuff, like how to research who people are, the location of something. I mean, it's usually an hour lecture, so you can't get into too much detail, but I try to give people the tools, the search engine tools to do a better job, not just Google it, and go to the first site, but I also give like real estate property records and newspaper archives, and how to check for plagiarism on, reports from certain people from the UK. But other avenues that they can explore and get deeper into it so they can figure out things for themselves. It's not an extensive course. It's obviously, because it's only an hour long, but at least I try to give them a little bit, and I share some of that knowledge on the blogs. And when I write the articles, I usually I always have the references. I cite everything that I do, and try to give all the information, not just to criticize, but saying, hey, this is why I think it's wrong. So that's a little bit that I do. I don't know. What else can we do?
When I publish, I do the same thing.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've been trying to do through our Facebook page and a new initiative coming up that we can talk about at some point is to actually provide the links. Go here for this, go here for that. I know Mellanie asked for some of them and provided a whole bunch on, the Division of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, the parapsych.org. If we're going to tell people this information's out there, we need to help them get there, because a lot of people just don't know how to do that. I think I sent Tim a Google Scholar link at one point, and he's like, great, you just screwed up my whole afternoon because I looked up on Google Scholar.
Yeah.
But part of it to making the field better is not only recommending what people need to do, but where they can find it. I mean, I feel that's part of my job, because I do know I have a lot of links. I have a lot of papers, as Kenny's said, and I feel like we should provide them with a path to get there. I mean, sometimes I can't, at a moment's notice, I can't go home and, pull 10 PDFs right away. It might take some time, but if I give you a list of references, I kind of expect some people should know how to go look those up and find them. But I think part of our job of trying to make the field better is basically, where do you get this stuff and how can you find it in order to read it and have access to it? Now, you can lead a horse to water, but you ain't going to make them drink. So there's only so much you can do. But at least I feel like if somebody says, I asked you where I can get this information, either here's the reference or here's the link, and if you don't read it, that's on you. But on the other hand, I think it's part of our job to provide them information on where to go to get that stuff.
I agree.
I think, and I'm to some extent, I agree with you, Dave. And I can provide, and you know what? And I will do this. I'm moving this week cross country, so I only have a couple of days in which I'll be able to post up some of it. But once I'm settled in, then I will post up even more. I know the library databases for if you're interested in looking at this, you know, you're going to want to go to this database. If you want to find this, you're going to want to look at this database. If you're looking for peer-reviewed journals on pretty much anything, you can always go to JSTOR. But I've now gotten to a point to where I will provide these sources, but I expect someone else to do their own research. Because I'm tired of, I work and I help a lot of teams.
I agree. 100%. I agree. And also some of those are free and some of those are not. And the ones I paid money for, some of those journal articles, I mean, copyright law and all that, I paid for my access, not to hand them out to everybody. So that's kind of what we just said, but I agree completely.
And I've done this with Kenny before too. Kenny's asked me, hey, I'm looking for this, or what was it, Houdini's something or other. And I said, okay, give me a second. And so I go into a database that I have a subscription for and that I know how to finagle through. And I was able to get him, a name or something else like that. I don't mind doing that. I do that for teams. That's what I mean by, I do a lot of research and I stay behind. But if someone's coming to me, if it's like Kenny, I wouldn't mind sharing my research because we have a very close relationship. I would just feed it to him, save him time because I know his work. If it's some of these other teams or researchers, I'll say, okay, this is the database you can go to. If that doesn't work out, you can also look here and you can look here, or this is what you're going to want to ask the genealogist or your librarian. And then they should be able to steer you in the right direction. And then I stop because I think there's a level of responsibility. If you're going to use that term, I'm a paranormal researcher, then damn it, you better start doing your research.
Damn right.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. So it's on.
Yeah, I agree. You can only go so far. I don't mind pointing somebody in the right direction, but I don't want to. I'm not doing your work for you.
Well, I know, but you have to give them the basics to get to where they need to be. So if you provide, if they ask you, okay, I need something about something to do with near-death experiences. So you get them started, give them a little taste of what they're looking for. Give them that article and then let them find it out from there. And if they can't do it, they'll come back to you and say, okay, what else you got? And okay, well, this is where we go for all of our articles. So this is where I'm going to point you to. Yep. So here you go.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good balance, I think, is people ask you, and Mellanie said it, Kenny, you said it, that you can provide them guidance, but we got to draw a line somewhere. Because obviously, I've provided stuff to Kenny, I've provided links to Mellanie and Tim, and we've shared stuff between us. But I got a full-time job. I can't sit here and dig for articles and send you the actual PDFs on everything I've collected and paid for over the years. Right. People have to take a little bit of responsibility and delve into it when you provide them the route or avenue to get there.
I think there's a big difference. For me personally, and I don't know if this is going to sound cliquish or whatever, but I've worked with you guys. I mean, all of us in here in this chat, I've worked with you guys for different projects and we've shared information, and I have no problem. Like if any of you call on me, what do you need? I have no hesitation on that. It's like, if you ask me a question, what do you need?
I've done the same thing with you. It might take time, but we're all kind of friends and we share stuff freely.
But we also work together on these things. And I guess what I'm saying is, I get probably about between 10 and 15 emails a day from people asking for information. And just like you guys, I have a full-time job and I have a part-time job too. And I also have my family that I want to spend time with. So I don't mind pointing people in the right direction. Like saying, hey, you know what? This is what I've come up with. Here's an article I've read. It's pretty good. But from then on, this is where I got the article. This is where you need to go. But I also found that routine where some people become dependent on you.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they're constantly
That's a good
asking you what to do. And that's where we draw the line. Like, all right, this is where you need to go. The information's there. You need to start looking into it because that's how I did it. That's how I learned.
Right. But, understandably, these are new people coming into the field, or people that are really interested in what we are wanting to provide them. So initially, we really do need to provide them with the basics that give them a reason to pull forward. So yes, it might be 5 different people in a week that ask this, but this is a good thing. And these are the things that we are trying to do. Isn't this the reason?
I'm not arguing with that.
And I would go as far to say as if we don't provide it, guess where they're going to go?
Right. And I'm not arguing with you. I'm not.
No, we're
going
not
against you. What I'm saying is that there's going to be a line where
How much you did.
We need to.
No, that's true because we are limited on time.
But how much do we want to provide to this is the reason to pull this, this forward. This is the reason why we're having this conversation, to get this going forward, to provide people with the things that we need to. Yes, I understand that it takes time and energy for us personally to do this. Maybe we need to create a website that is going to provide people, you could just say, here, go to this website, and this will give you a good information about where to proceed. If you're interested in life after death, ghosts and hauntings, but whatever the case is. But this would be a really good starting point.
Sounds like a good thing for Tim to do.
I do like making websites.
We really need to. I think we also need to encourage the skill building.
That's what I was going to say. Is that I can provide
always prior to anything skill based. You always want people to learn before they attempt, right?
That is learning. Learning where to get the information for themselves, learning where to look is a skill that they have to understand. If you're going to call yourself a paranormal investigator, if you're going to call yourself an investigator at all, you need to have some kind of skill in investigating.
That's fair.
Well, I'm saying to begin.
So
we need to look.
You kind of plant. You kind of plant the seed. It's one of those things like
that's what I'm saying.
You plant a fish, he eats for a day. You teach him how to fish, he eats forever.
Forever, and that's
forever.
it. That's it.
But here's the problem, though. Here's the problem, everybody. Do they want to do this?
No.
And do they want to learn?
If they don't, then it's on them.
Well, no, that is also, here's the thing. I can provide all kind, and this is what I do. I do background research for different teams, and I've done it for a TV show, and I've done it for a TV show that went to Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, gave them everything, original documents, and then it was twisted. And it makes me look like Boo Boo the Fool because 1, I wasted my time. 2, I burned a resource. And 3, then they said, well, we got this from here, and they falsified info, or they took it out of context. And what I'm afraid of is these new investigators, because if you're a researcher, I'm very adamant about this. If you're going to call yourself a paranormal researcher, you should know how to do research. I should not have to teach you how to do that. But for the newer investigators, if they don't know how to do research, or if they don't know how to take the correct information, and I don't, then, it should not be my responsibility to do it for them.
No, the important point with Jen was saying is it's not on you. You didn't fail.
You didn't fail.
You did what you had to do. They failed.
So you need to continue to do what you're doing to advance the field in the way that you feel necessary. If people don't do the things that you are requesting, it's on them, not you. So, but you still have that responsibility. If this is what we're trying to do to advance the field, it's still on you to continue to advance one way or another to provide information.
Which I think we've all done. And when you get to the point where somebody doesn't take that and learn and go forward, then I'm going to drop the first F-bomb tonight. It's like, fuck it. Then it's on you.
It is.
damn.
It was not me. Sweet baby Jesus in a manger. It was not
Mel
me.
swears first. So tonight I'm just gonna drop a
Woof.
fucking F-bomb, and there
You know,
we go.
Yeah, I don't.
We're passionate about this.
I personally don't think. I think that the majority of the people in this micro society say that they want to advance the field. Well, and I say micro society because the paranormal is the tie between them all, but they're just different, groups within that. I don't think the majority of them want to truly do what it takes to advance the field. I think that's just a catchphrase that's being used just like critical thinking and everything else.
No, that's
I think
really
those of us.
that's
You are
key.
1,000% right on that, because
That's
that's
absolutely
what we've
correct.
been knowing. Yeah,
We've seen that for years, and it's getting worse.
So
Right.
that's why, like, for a large portion of it, I see there's just one little small community in this micro society of the paranormal that actually does want to. And with them, I share resources left and right. I will, because I have I have databases of articles and things like that, as well as from the outside source. And I have access to different libraries and different databases that can actually help them do research. And like I've done for what's your name, Kenny? No, I'm just kidding. I've done it for you before, where I've just said, yeah, actually, I've got this and this and this and this. Here, read this. I don't mind doing that. For the ones that, if I am not certain about them, then it's like, you got to prove your salt. You got to make sure that your salt is there.
Right.
absolutely.
Yep. No, that's a good point.
I think there's a nano society within the micro society that actually wants to advance.
That's why I say community. There's that community within the micro society.
Right.
I think a lot of people also have this. What I've been seeing lately, doing a few things, is that people want to presume that they're here. I'm sorry, you can't see me. Yes.
Up here.
Okay. However, their intelligence is here and they're just faking it. I mean, and I'm sure you've seen that 1,000 times over. But
Drop the mic. Here we go.
I know this is just it's a known fact. But however, I think there are
Kenny's
ways.
laughing so hard he can't take it.
There are ways to make these people responsible for what they're presenting. So I mean, I think we can do it, and I think that is the level of what we're talking about, is to reach a certain area that most people are, which is here, and we want them to be here. And I think that there's easily a way. Well, not easily. No, I'm going to say not easily.
Preach it, sister.
Preach it.
Okay. I agree with you. And,
Well,
I
back
am
to the root of the problem.
okay. It's
Anyway,
not,
okay, so
Like you said, Mellanie, I think that there are like levels that you can get people at where they can build their skills and intelligence in order to get to where we want them. They're not always going to go from here to here.
Yep.
I mean, it's not going to be possible.
Yep. No.
So this is going to be a long-term. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We're not. I don't want to give people the impression that we think we're elite people.
okay. I agree with her.
I agree too, but the comment.
Some of us have been in the field for a long time.
We've seen it.
And we've started at the bottom, where we've all started at every freaking bug is an orb. But we have progressed. We've learned. We've gotten better. And we're actually expecting other people to do that. We're not trying to be arrogant. We are trying to help you based on the experiences.
Elevate society.
Based on the experiences and everything we've done, we are trying to elevate people and save them the time and get them to make the field better. I don't see it as arrogant. And if people see that,
I agree.
I'm sorry. That's their problem.
Absolutely agree. My thing is that I look at and I know I come across as an academic snob. I do. And you know what? To some extent, for some things, I am an academic snob. That doesn't necessarily mean that I expect this person to have the same degrees that I do. It just means that if I share this source, if I share this article, you have to be able to read it and understand what it is that you are reading. Because if you don't, you may misunderstand it, you may misconstrue the entire point, and then you put it out. And what you're doing is you're then espousing false information. I have a problem with that. So it is a very, very, very important to me to look at the credibility of the individuals that are claiming to be researchers, that are claiming that I want to advance this field.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes I will Barney style it for people. And that may sound ignorant. That is a term we use in the military where it means break it down so that, you know, an 8-year-old can understand it.
You need to do that sometimes.
So, and I don't have a problem doing that. The problem that we're coming across now is that people, like you said, Jen, try to be like they're up here.
Yep.
When in actuality, they're still in diapers.
Yep.
And then they get butthurt when you say, well, actually, no, that's not correct. That's not how it's done. That's not what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you point that out, then this entire group over here jumps on you. You're bullying. That's not para-unity. That, first off, that's not a real thing, but that's not para-unity. And you're bullying and you're attacking. And it's like, actually, no, that's how the research process works.
Yeah, that's how the real world works.
So it gets very frustrating. And I know after, you know, I can tell you, you know, I started in 2000 and I've become frustrated because it's like, look, if I've done my homework and I've made the phone calls and I've read things that I thought were absolute balderdash, but I still read it so that I could get another opinion. Maybe I'm missing something. Why aren't you willing to do the same homework? But I'm considered a bully because I said, actually, no, you're wrong.
I think a lot of it, but let me make a point. I think a lot of it is the approach. And both sides, I'm going to be fair, both sides don't do it professionally.
Mm-hmm. That's not true, Dave.
I'm not, well.
Yeah, it
It all depends on the situation because I have seen more times than not where it's been tried to be professional and it's just kind of like curt.
That's a fair statement. That's fair. That's fair.
It's just interpreted another way.
I agree with that. I agree. I'm not saying that's not true, but I think what we need to do is elevate it to a point where it's not personal, it's professional. I am not, you know, Kenny and I, we use this example all the time. We have beat the crap out of each other on certain debates, but it never went personal. The most personal I think we ever got is, I think we need to agree to disagree. And I said, I think you're too skeptic. He said, you're too much of a believer. And actually, for me, that made me look back and say, okay, maybe I checked myself. I'm like, maybe he's right. Let me think about that. But I'm open to that because I am open to learning what the truth is, not necessarily what the crap is out there.
Right.
And I think that's something everybody needs to learn from is the criticism should not be taken personally.
No.
But I think you touched upon this before, Dave. I've heard you say this in your show. Sometimes like peer reviews come across really, really harsh. And if you're not used to submitting research, if you're not used to that, you may take it very personal, but it's not.
No,
and
it's not.
But you can't force this entire community where the majority of them have never published, have never subjected themselves to peer review, that don't understand research methods. Some, you know, let's be real, they get their education from TV.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
That's not with this. You can't tell this entire group, you guys need to be professional because this is how it really is. because I don't think they want it. They want the Brian Kano parapsychologist rather than, Dave Schumacher parapsychologist.
No,
right.
don't call me a parapsychologist. I'm not.
I'm just saying, I know, but you know what I mean? You know what I mean? With
More than Brian Kano, but I'm not going to say I'm a parapsychologist.
But I'm saying that there's a different level. They don't want this. They
True.
want the,
So-
the people that you see on
problem is-
TV.
And I get it. People say things that you're going to take offense to, because you know what, you put a lot of time, effort, and love into a project. It's like it's your baby. I get it. But Jen and I went through the peer review process on a paper, and we thought it was great and whatever. And the first journal rejected it, and we're like, what the hell? But because they rejected it and the reasons why they rejected it, it made us better, and it made for a better paper.
Absolutely.
It was not personal, because it's actually an anomalous peer review. They don't know who I am. They don't know who Jen is.
That's how the peer review process goes.
They don't know who Joey Casual is from Michael Persinger's lab, but they look at the data and they say, here is our opinion of the data. It's not like, I think you're a shithead and you don't know what you're doing. It's all about the information.
And they also brought up different perspectives of that we may not have even thought of. What about this perspective? Oh, yeah, you're completely right. We didn't even think about that. So, there's a lot of.
But again, you're comparing, what you're expecting a lot more from what the majority of this community is used to and can do. You have to look at ability. Half of these people, are willing to do. So it's not necessarily the responsibility shouldn't necessarily fall on those of us that have gone through this process, because believe it or not, the historical submissions are just as brutal. I'm working on my thesis and it for another degree, and it's like jump into Jehoshaphat's. You're just as bad as like the first time around, but the responsibility shouldn't fall on us necessarily. And it does seem like we're elitists, because we're saying, look, you're not up here yet. You need to take the baby steps to get up here. The responsibility should be on those down here wanting to get up here.
Okay. Yeah. So can I just make a comment real quick based on your well,
all
right.
Fucking bad.
So let's take this in a completely different context. Okay. So say you start a new job at a new company you really don't know a lot about. Okay. So you look at your boss and you're like, okay, what do you want me to do? And so your boss tells you, okay, this is what I expect from you. This is what is part of your job description. And you've never done that before, but you're willing and you want to try. So this is something that you have to kind of look at it in this perspective. So you want to learn what it takes to be a really good paranormal investigator and stuff, but you don't have the information to get there. So you're looking to your boss or people like us who know more about it to progress you into that area, right? These are things that these people are looking for. Yes, they may not always have the brains or the information or even the ability to think correctly. Whatever the case may be. Yes, I see you laughing, but it's true. And we all know that. Okay, I'm going to give, But however, they still want to learn. And they want the steps that it takes to learn. And we, as the elite or whatever you want to call it, the experienced, whatever, we have a responsibility to provide them with the steps that it takes to get to where they want to be. And if they're not willing to take those steps, then it's on them. It's not on us. But we need to be able to provide that.
I have to disagree to an extent, because, and I don't want anybody who's listening to misunderstand me. I don't think you have to have degrees. I don't think any of us are better or smarter than anybody else. I don't.
I'm not
saying
a fair point.
But I'm not going to. I'm not going to apply for a job that I'm not qualified to do or that I have no experience in.
But what about if you went to school, you want to be a microbiologist,
Okay.
but you don't know anything about it. So how do you get there?
If I wanted to be a microbiologist, I'd go to school and I'd fucking study about it first.
So where do you go to
And then
school?
when I get out into the field, then you do your field studies. When I was, in journalism, I was a boot reporter. But
Okay, these are common sciences, though. These are not
The
paranormal.
this is the paranormal, right? This is the paranormal. Therefore, it's not my responsibility to educate these people to hone their craft or in a hobby. They're not getting credentials. You don't get paid for this. It's a hobby. Now, I will, if somebody comes to me, hold on 1 second. Okay, wait 1 second. Just 1 second, ma'am. 1 second, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Look, if they want to learn from me, then they can come and they can ask for me. I share the information, but it is not my responsibility to go out there and teach everybody else. This is my hobby. That's what it is. It's not a job. It is a hobby. It is something that I endeavor to do, and I've done for 20 years because I'm interested in. I don't get paid for it. Nobody pays me to do research for them. It is a hobby. If this was a job where, look, somebody's like, as a combat medic, I was a senior NCO. I was a combat medic, and my job was to train my other soldiers. They signed up for it. I knew they were medics. I needed to make sure that they were proficient in our craft because people's lives are on the line. That is different. Now, if they want to go out and they want to play cards or play spades and dominoes, I'm not going to teach them all the tricks of my trades unless they come and they ask me, because they wanted to learn to play. So fucking learn to play. If you got questions, come to me.
I think the problem we're running into is this field has a lot of unknowns. And but my defense always is there are things that are known. People don't have the knowledge in the background.
That are what? That are what?
There are things that are known. If you
known?
Known.
Meemaw.
Sorry.
Known.
If you look at, my biggest gripe about the field overall is people have no understanding of the literature that's out there. Mm-hmm. There is a lot. You may agree with it or you may not, but there is a lot of stuff that's out there.
I agree with that.
Maybe there's no experts but there's people that are experts in studying this phenomena. Mm-hmm. They may not be experts of if ESP exists or the data supports it, but there's experts who have dedicated their careers and have academic credentials to study this. So, there is a lot of unknown. But to come out and say that nobody knows what's going on in this field and therefore it's free game for anybody, that's not true.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying
I know you're not. I'm just kind of going on from your point.
Yeah, it's like you said, there's so much out there. There's been so much written. Let's take Bobby Mackey's, music world, for example. There's been a lot written. I know that our report was published in Doubtful News. It was shared a lot. So that information is out there, and it's the responsibility of the investigator or the researcher to look for that. Now, if they want to get even more in depth, then you know what? If they come across me, or I put it out on our website. I've done podcasts. I've talked to radio shows. I've done news, things like that. Put that information out there. I can only do so much, but it's the responsibility. If you're coming into the paranormal and you're interested, and you are truly interested in being a paranormal researcher and investigator, not a ghost hunter, then you do your homework and you look and you look.
How do you do your homework though if you don't have the right avenues to pursue?
I disagree. You look it up. You research it.
I didn't have anyone hold my hand. I didn't have anybody take me by the hand.
We want these people to get to where we are, right? So why not give them the avenues that it took us so hard to get to give them that?
Okay,
that's part of the experience.
I'm going to make a comment here.
I
have tried to do that. I've tried to do that with our own group back in the day.
But after that,
and they just didn't do it. So at a certain point, you say, I tried, I can't do any more.
I mean, I think that's basically what we said. Like, I don't mind helping out a little bit and pointing you in the right direction, telling you, like, this is where you can get information, but that's it. You don't do their work for them. You need to learn. You need to build that experience yourself. That's how you build the skills. I'm not going to hold your hand and take you through step by step each and every time. I'm going to tell you, hey, this is what you can do to find information, and you need to dig. I did it myself. I didn't have anybody teach me. I didn't have
Right.
nobody sat with me over and over again.
And
Once
would you
in a
say it
while, I
made you a better researcher and paranormal researcher and investigator?
absolutely.
You see,
Absolutely.
the avenues are there. People use the internet to do research on so many different things. You want to know how to grow tomatoes? Let me look it up. Let me go to the library. Let me, ask this person. They know how to do it. They're not stupid. That's my thing. Hey,
And
but okay. But some of
some,
them, they're really not stupid. I knew nothing about photography. I could not for the life of me understand how the swirl of light gets in a photograph and people are thinking it's a ghost. And I'm wondering, okay, so what did I do? I got on the internet and I started looking up things. And then I started noticing there was a lot written by a guy named Kenny Biddle. And so then I started digging for him. How do I get in contact with this man? Who do I know that may know him? And I started asking and asking and asking. And that's how I met Kenny and I learned about it. That's the avenues were there. He's on the internet. My work's on the internet. My name's out there. Your guys' names are out there. It's the responsibility of them. Those avenues are there. It's whether or not they choose to go that extra step.
Right.
That's exactly it. And I think we've all provided information and tools, and I think we all would continue to do that. And if they don't act upon it, then
That's on them.
That's on them. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going to throw it out there. I haven't heard a lot from Tim. I think we need to wake him up and see if he's got anything going on.
I'm eating popcorn and listening to you guys and taking notes.
No, there's no freeloading, Tim. Come on.
I can only okay. So there were a couple things that I thought of, maybe just from my own experience. I think researching and peer review. I think that it's good if you maintain a humble sense of yourself. I think everybody's going to be wrong. Everybody's never going to be right. To me, I would rather my friends tell me I'm wrong, even if we fight it out, than to put something way out there and get smashed in public.
absolutely.
I would rather and that's what you depend on your friends to do. If you
I'm
just
so
keep,
used to it.
if you just keep giving stuff to somebody and they're like, dude, that's great. Oh, that's awesome. That's wonderful. I mean, that's nice. But you're wrong somewhere. Chances are the more things you give out, the more opportunities that you've done something wrong are there. So that was kind of during that conversation. That was my thought. The conversation about helping people reach goals. I think Jen was making a good point. Like my experience of being with CPS for a long time with the state and doing investigations, child abuse and neglect. We would get these guys and I should say people fresh out of school, social workers, psychologists, and they would come into the state and they would need to learn to do investigations. The benefit, though, I think the difference is the benefit of that people would team up with someone that had a lot of experience, and you watch that person. That's what I did when I got there. They gave me someone that was there for 8 or 9 years, and I went out in the field and I did research and I did work with them. I watched them. I asked them a ton of questions. I think the break is, unfortunately, you don't have that with looking up research like you do when you're looking up, you're like, we're all talking over the internet and that's great, but I can't go to Mel and hang out with Mel at the library. I can't go to Kenny's and go
Yes,
run around.
you can. You flown out here.
I have flown out there. Yeah. But I get, I understand what Jen was saying in that aspect of you take them, you do, at least, you take them, you got them, but at some point you got to let them go. And if they can't perform the task adequate, then, they either get cut loose or they get transferred to another, to somewhere else, but not in the field of protecting children because you're not going to cut it. You can't keep taking somebody to the well and spooning them water for them. So
That's good.
you just can't. You can't do it. At some point, they got to let go, and I think at some point, that's kind of where humility hits it. I'm never going to I love photography, but I don't foresee myself as being as educated about it as Kenny. I love research, and Dave just gives me so much great information. I love the things that he sends me. I learn so much. I've actually had to watch a YouTube video to relearn to read scientific papers so that I could go back and read the papers that gives me, I read them sometimes 2 or 3 times. And this is really strange, but I've developed this habit that works for me as I read the paper backwards. So I start at discussion and I end at abstract. I don't know why, but that for some reason I get a lot more out of that.
I do the same.
Yeah, you read it backwards?
That's pretty common,
Yeah.
actually.
Oh, really? So I'm
Yeah.
not. Well, I feel better about myself. See, this is therapy.
One of the things I recommend is skipping the methods and the results and reading the introduction, the discussion, and the abstract to kind of give you everything you really need to know without having some of the in-depth knowledge of the methods and the math and the analysis.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, but I have to be aware of what I can do and aware of what I cannot do. But I can also know who I can go to help with what I can't do. And that's kind of where I'm at.
That's a good point. Like knowing your limitations.
Yeah.
Knowing the limit of your knowledge and understanding and skill set and admitting that to not only yourself, but to others that ask and being able to reach out to other people. It is humility because you have to, I mean, we see it. I'm sure we've all seen it in this hobby that people just want to be that person. They want to be the go-to for everything and they know everything. They don't, but they think they do. And they have an answer for everything, even though if they make half the shit up. And it seems to be a taboo to say, I don't know.
I mean, personally, I think I've learned the most by saying, I don't know.
Yes.
Right.
And I've gone to people who knew, back in years and years ago, I wanted to use a Fluxgate magnetometers. And I'm thinking, okay, I bought it. I played with it. I don't really know how to use it. So I reached out to somebody in the UK, Dr. Jason Braithwaite. And amazingly, he was more than thrilled to help me. And I learned how to do it properly. And I learned how to make it part of what we do in the proper way. But I think that's an excellent point, is if you admit you don't know something and you need to move on and ask somebody, that's where you're really going to get better and learn. There's no shame in that. That's how you get better.
Yes.
But you know what? You don't, and I'll be the first to admit, I've said this to Kenny a lot of times. I'm not interested in physics, quantum mechanics, engineering, like that technical science. I don't care. I'm not that kind of minded. And you can explain it to me and explain it to me and explain it to me. And I still don't understand how water towers work. You know why? Because about 3 minutes into someone explaining it to me, I've zoned out because I'm bored. And I will readily acknowledge that. But damn it, I can tell you who to go to if you want to know how water towers work. And I know that I can ask them, and I've done this in several reports where I've asked somebody, can you please explain this? And would you mind writing something and allow me to publish or include that in my research or in my report? And I will give you credit for it. I don't have a problem with that either. Because you know what? That's not my forte, nor is it my interest. Now, I know the basics, but I can't tell you the technical way an ovulus works or doesn't work. And quite honestly, I don't give a shit. But I have somebody on my team who does. That's how it works. I have 2 friends who can take it apart, and they're just fascinated by this toy. Okay, would you mind writing about it, or would you mind sharing about that? And can you Barney style it so that people like me can understand it? Sure, no problem.
Okay, but let me
That's
ask
how
you
it
a
would
question,
work.
Melanie. If you were going to do research on it and write a paper about it, would you go out and figure out how it works personally?
If that's part of my thing, yes. But one of the things that I've learned in when I was in one of my grad courses at one point was with research methods. They've said sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can include certain things in your study. Do I need to learn the basics of it? Yeah. And can I do that? Yeah. But if you can get someone else who isn't SME, utilize that research, because it's important to pull all of that in. Because keep in mind, my field is different than, because you have to present different viewpoints, your contentions. I can do that. But am I going to sit down and do the math for it? Absolutely not. I will cite.
It all depends on what's required and how in depth and what you're doing. If it's typically you just need to understand a piece of equipment and some analysis, that's one thing. But I mean, if you're writing your dissertation or your thesis on how that equipment works and all the ins and outs of it, yeah, you're going to need that in-depth knowledge. So yeah, totally agree with you. But
yeah, but see, I don't sit there and say, well, I'm going to do a scientific experiment and throw together some data and analysis and prove this. I've never said I was going to do that. That's not where I go. But I do have members on my team that said that if we want to do an experiment, we all understand the scientific methods. Some of us are academics, some of us aren't. And we work together as a whole. And then once we get all of that stuff down, I have called, for example, I've called Rob Lee, before up and, said, okay, I need to understand why this works and what's the math behind this. Where do I need to go? How should I put this? How should I put that? That's where I use sources. And I do, Jen, I have shared him. I've shared Mitch. I've shared Kenny. I share these people, these resources with so many people. And then I find out, number one, they didn't publish anything. Number two, they didn't include that. They didn't even utilize the information that I shared, even though I gave that person a heads up. And three, what they did put out was just another video of them doing an EVP session that I could have turned on Travel Channel and seen the same exact thing. I feel like I wasted my time, so it depends on the group and what their mission is for me to really go to that extent, my own group included.
Okay, good. So Kenny, I think all this discussion for the last hour, oh my God, hour and 40 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Has been off of your first question. So
Yeah.
do you want to broach another subject?
I don't think so. I think a few people need to go. Because we were scheduled for an hour and we obviously went over. So I don't want to go into another topic, but
this has to be one of the most enlightening. And you know what? I will tell you guys, everybody on here, I'm in full transparency. When I sat down, you guys saw my face when I said, again, what are we going to talk about? Hasn't this topic been talked about? Jesus, how many times? And that's why, like, when my initial comment was originality, let's quit doing with that. I know, I thought, oh my God, that just happened. It's so embarrassing. But
we got it recorded.
No, oh God. But this has to be the first time I've had a conversation like this where in quite some time that I felt was informative, enlightening. It gave different viewpoints, and you don't have to have a master's degree to understand what we're all talking about.
Yeah, and I think the important
your view.
Yeah, everybody can back up their view, and the important thing is if we disagree with each other, which we have, we're obviously going to disagree, but it's at a level where it's like, okay, I disagree with you, but whatever.
There's no ad hominem attacks.
No, we're not. We're not attacking each other. It's just, we're pretty open. We're all pretty open and honest. And, we might say we agree with that or we don't agree with that. But that's how we have discussions and make things better.
Right. Would you say this is productive towards advancing is this how it should be done?
I think it needs to be like this.
We need
Because
more.
it's also not,
We
you
need
know,
more.
we're also not preaching to a choir. I think by having the different viewpoints, it really does then broaden the discussion. When everybody's just all saying the same damn thing, after a while, it's like, got it, noted, check in the box, moving on.
But through school, undergraduate, even, you know, whatever, associates, bachelors, masters, PhDs, the way you get better is people challenge you and you have discussions.
Right.
That is how you get better. And not saying that everybody needs an academic degree,
don't-
but anything in life, even my job, my boss, we set goals, we challenge
Mhm.
each other, and we achieve those goals or we don't. And the ones where we fail, we learn. But
Right.
successes, we also learn.
Right.
So it's all about learning and trying to be better. It's pretty simple to me.
It's all about the way you handle it. It's
Yeah.
not kicking and screaming and being upset and stuff like that. It's saying, okay, I have a differing opinion. Okay, I understand your opinion and I can see your point of view and all that. And that's great. So let's just agree to disagree and move on.
Yeah,
You know,
so
I mean, I guess
I agree with
I
you
get
though.
passionate just like you do, Mellanie. I think we both do.
But I think I agree. This is one of
But
the best
we're
discussions
respectful.
in a long time. So,
Yeah. Well, because
Anyway.
it's also, and keep in mind, you know, Kenny, you don't have a degree, do you?
No,
Like
I have an associate's degree.
but
You
you
have
know
a
what I mean?
and-
And yet you were able to back up your statements. You're able to, you know, it doesn't matter. I don't want anybody to think that, okay, well, they're a bunch of snobs. It's not like that.
No. You do not need a degree. But I'll tell you, one of the people I hired at work had no degree at all, but he was one of the smartest, most business savvy people, technically oriented that I ever hired, because he was willing to learn and he based everything on what he learned and taking the next step.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, some of the most brilliant minds I've ever come across, and I mean this with my life, are infantrymen that join the military straight out of high school. You know, intelligence is one thing. You can have an academic background. That's great. That doesn't necessarily make you smart. At the end of the day, you spent a lot of money and you got a piece of paper. But intelligence is when you get this information and you ingest it, you can understand it, and you can share it, and you don't twist it, but you understand it. You've got this knowledge, and
It's the
that
ability
I
to
respect.
critically think.
Yes. I don't like that term critical thinking when we're talking about the paranormal anymore. I absolutely hate it. And why? Because it's been used as a catchphrase. That I have found that a lot of individuals, a lot of teams think that if they use the term critical thinking, they're going to get skeptics to like them, and they're going to make them sound very scientific and smarter than they are. And in fact, there's no critical thinking involved in anything that they've done. So I don't really like using that term anymore. So I kind of stray away from it. I just say, you know, have some intellect, have some thought. But
Fair.
you know, I'm so tired of these. You know, I don't like using the scientific method. I don't like the terms critical thinking. I don't even like that term paranormal research anymore, just because people, the way that it's been, for lack of a better term, abused. It has.
But is it because you don't? Is it because you don't like it, or they're abusing it? Because if they're abusing it, that's one thing, and that needs to be put aside. But if you don't like it, that's another.
No. I that's why I said within the paranormal community, I don't like to use the term critical thinking, because it's been used as a catchphrase. It's just as bad as when people say I'm collecting evidence. You know, I cringe at it because I think, Now when Kenny says it, I know, okay, he can't have a conversation without throwing out the words critical thinking. I'm so used to it. but I also he means it.
You don't like it because you think it's being misapplied, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I won't use it. You know, I don't like to use it anymore.
But we should not cave to what goes on there. We should hold them to a standard.
It's the paranormal micro society. That's there. There is no standard. You can't force it when the 80% of the people aren't going to abide by it.
I get what she's saying. I still use it, but I use it.
We know you do. I'm
Yeah.
just waiting for the tattoo.
I know.
Critical on one eyelid and thinking on the other.
There you go. Right above.
But I mean, it's what I like most about this entire conversation is, and yeah, Jen, you know what? Sometimes I get really savage, and it's when certain situations I don't really care about professionalism. It's out the door. But for the most part, I try to be, and I think I am successful. It's just with certain situations, it calls for something else. But with this conversation, it's enlightening. We've had differences of opinions. It's not all been the same. We've had original thought for once, and it's so flippin' refreshing. And most importantly, this wasn't like watching paint dry. I mean, honestly, let's be real. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I've watched YouTube videos, and it's like, God bless America. I'd rather go to the dentist. This is horrid.
Ouch. That's awful.
Rather go to the dentist. That's pretty harsh.
Am I wrong?
No,
No.
not at all.
No,
No.
I just like the reference.
I did too. Yeah, that's going to be my next bar I'm going to use as a level.
All right. Why don't we wrap this up for tonight?
Okay.
If you guys want to take a minute and just closing thoughts for a minute, and then we can all wrap it up and get out of here.
I just gave mine, so I'm
You
done.
just did yours. You're good. Dave, you want to go?
Yeah, I think this was a very productive dialogue. We all interacted. We showed that we can have a difference in opinion and discuss it. And I think all of us, despite what our background is or what our ultimate goal is in the field, is that we all want to make it better. And I think we all need to work together. And even though we disagree on things, we will definitely make the field better if we can work together and talk through things. And I think we should continue to do this. I really do.
It's a respectful thing.
It's respect. It's not, you don't get respect just by demanding it.
No.
You have to earn it. And I gotta say, Kenny, you and I think we've earned each other's respect. We didn't demand it.
Right.
I respect where you're coming from, and who knows what you think about me, but who cares? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, dude. I'm kidding. But it happens because of the dialogue we've had. You may not agree with my opinion and my interpretation of things. I may not agree with yours, but we respect each other because we make a good argument, and we can talk. And at the end of the day, we can walk away and say, that's good.
Agree to disagree.
We're going to agree to disagree, but we're going to keep talking about things. And I really think that's how the field is going to progress.
Good.
Yep.
Tim?
Well, I've enjoyed it a lot. Literally, I'm telling you, as you guys were going at it there for a little while, I was literally taking notes. I have notes right beside me. I enjoy any discussion I have where I have to write something down and rethink it and relook at it. And I did that on quite a few. I enjoyed it. It's been a while since I've had a good discussion like this and listened to a good discussion. I like that. Honestly, I think as a good example to anybody that is watching or that maybe watches, is you seen a few disagreements within this very group during this time, and we still at the end of the day are laughing and joking and picking on each other, which I think is a great thing. I really care about all you guys. And even if I got mad at one of you guys, I would secretly still look at your websites and get information from it, but I wouldn't admit it.
You freaking CIA.
So, I mean, I think that says a lot about the group. And I hope as an example, it can lead by example for anybody that wants to see that we don't have to be 100% on everything.
Yeah, that's great. Great way to close it. And I'll just say that I think I could just repeat what everybody said already, because all good points. I love that we came together. I love that we can talk, and just talk. We just had a conversation, and it's real simple. Nobody gets upset. Well, I mean, we can get intense, but you don't get upset with each other. We can talk about things. We can work it out. We can realize if we are wrong and rethink our point or rethink our position. Some things might be said that cause us to take a look at ourselves. And I think the best thing we can do is look in the mirror sometimes, and really look and say, am I doing this right? Is this what I really think? Is there something more? Can I be wrong? And these are good thoughts. And I think this conversation was just great. I really enjoyed it. And I can't thank you guys enough for coming together with this and just having this conversation. So
no, thanks for putting it together. It was
we all put it together. I mean, this was totally a group effort. This was not any one person. This was all of us coming together. I just happened to host it. That's it.
Yeah.
But you guys bring a lot to the table.
Say a lot. I'm sorry.
You say you did it though.
We kind of bombarded over you, but
That's okay. I mean, it doesn't.
You won't hear many podcasts or videos where Kenny doesn't talk most of the time.
Yeah, you have no idea how refreshing it was.
Hey, if we can't bust balls at the end of the day,
exactly.
it's not worth it.
Oh my God! You know how hard it is to get her to shut up.
Well, Mellanie,
Love you,
it was
Mel.
nice to talk to you and
It's-
get to know
you know what?
you.
And the
all
one thing
that,
I'll say
so.
is I met you all through a certain podcast
Mhm.
that, Tim and Matt did. I'm going to say Matt because that's how I met you all. And I got to say that I'm really glad I met you all. And I'm really glad that despite all the years and maybe some differences, we still can get together and talk about things. I really value that
That's
quite a bit.
nice. Yeah.
And occasionally walk like 5 miles through abandoned tunnels together.
Yeah, if somebody looks at the phone and says, "Oh, Dave, I don't think that's very far." It's like, dude, that's like 10 miles.
It's only an inch on the map.
It said 5 miles. It was 10 miles. Holy
Yeah, I
crap!
think I was working that day, thankfully.
That was a lot of fun, though, and
Yeah.
that's the type of things where, despite all this bullshit, and we don't agree on certain things, that we can still get together and take a 10-mile hike in the heat.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'm going to wrap it up so we can all go and do what we have to do afterwards. Again, I appreciate everyone getting together. I know it was a little time constraints and trying to get everyone situated and together. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I hope that we can do this again soon. And I mean, I had like 6 topics and we only got to 1. So I hope we can do this again.
Well, it sounds like 6 weeks of material there.
Easily.
All
right, people. Thank you so much and take care.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
right, everybody.